Explore your thoughts. Learn what you think you already know. We're taking you on a journey to the other side. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of The Other Side. You've been asking for it, so here it is. We're going to go over all of the amendments on the November 8th ballot, which is coming up this Saturday. So without further ado, let's just jump right in with myself and my handy-dandy producer, Ms. 16-year-old Emily. Okay, we got 4 amendments on the ballot, and we have, if you live in a Falls Parish, we have a tax for the fire. We're going to break everything down one by one. So amendment number 1, deadlines to veto bills and rules for veto sessions. So without reading everything, so the current situation, can you make it a little bit bigger, Emily? So the current situation, the governor has the authority to veto entire bills. Let's see, move down to where, okay, when a governor rejects bills, the Constitution calls for a veto session to the scheduled automatically starting at noon on the 40th day. This just basically speeds up the process now that there's a majority. The Republicans have a majority in the House and the Senate. And it's not just a Republican thing. Just I think they've never had, to my understanding, they've never had to have a veto session to try to have a special session to, if you get two-thirds, if the governor vetoes a bill, you can override the veto. You have to have another session to, with a 2/3 vote, I believe it is, in both the House and the Senate. Well, this has happened several times in the recent years, and I don't think we've ever actually had one before. So now they're seeing that the process in which the Constitution was written in the state of Louisiana in 1974, they maybe didn't take into account for a speedy process. So this is just trying to speed up the process. And some of these things, before we get into all of the other ones, is a constitutional amendment is something added to the Constitution. So normally when I'm looking at the constitutions, it's a no for me because it adds more to the Constitution. I am all in favor of a constitutional amendment. I'm sorry, of a constitutional convention to maybe rewrite a new constitution for Louisiana, where we don't have all these amendments that do away with other amendments that was already written years ago, which is something a little bit later down this list. But so for something like this, it doesn't affect you or I. We don't see it. Talking about amendment number 1. So in the process of it, which we say would speed up for the our legislatures, I can only go by, instead of just voting no, what I do, I'll pull up the bill, in which, in this case for Amendment 1, is House Bill 166. Now, if you go into the website of the Louisiana legislature, I had trouble finding it because you have to watch. It's from the 2022 session, not the 2023. So anyways, the House Bill 166 of the 2022. So you pull that up, and what's interesting to me, since it's something that we can't relate to us as citizens, this is obviously something that affects our legislatures. It was voted 99-0 in the House, Republicans, Democrats, and everything. And the absence there were 6 absent, including Darrell Dizitel, if you're here in the Falls Parish. And the Senate was 33-0 with 5 absent, including Heather Cloud here, if you in this region. But the overwhelming majority of the yes votes tells me that it must be something that needs to move forward and explore. So anyway, moving forward to amendment number 2, repeal of inactive special funds in the Constitution. So basically, in a nutshell, my understanding of this bill is there are like 6 inactive funds, things that were created years ago that they're not being used. They're just kind of on inactive status. We don't use them. They've never been used. They're zero. It doesn't affect us. They're just trying to clean up and move, sort of just do away with them. Again, that's Act 199 or House Bill 254. That was voted 97-0 in the House. So that, again, Republicans and Democrats, that tells me that it is something that they see that we don't see here as citizens. And again, it's trying to clean up other amendments or whatever to the Constitution. There were 8 absent. And in the Senate, it was 36-0 with 3 absent. Now, Constitutional Amendment number 3, I may catch a little bit of heat on this, but this is strictly only my opinion on the way I understand things, and you can follow along or you can vote however you want. But this is just the way I understand things. So it's property tax exemptions for first responders. Look, I love my first responders. They're great. They're awesome. If there's a fire or I'm in a car accident, that's great. It just seems like every election cycle, they have an amendment trying to give property tax exemptions to different groups. So say we pass everything. This group gets it. That group gets it. This group gets it. The area you live in still needs property taxes to function, to do their things. So what's going to happen to all of our property taxes? They're obviously going to go up. Then we're going to complain about that. So there's always going to give us something to complain about. You know, you could say that, well, how about the linemen? Whenever there's a storm, they come restore our power and save lives and whatever. You know, how about people that work offshore? They provide oil and natural gas for our utilities and everything else. You can go on and on down the list for whatever it is and put out different groups to give property taxes to. If I pay property taxes, you pay property taxes, we all pay property taxes. The only amendment that I've ever voted for, it was on the ballot a few years ago. It was for veterans, exemption for veterans. If you've stepped out and put your life on the line for our freedoms, I think you should have all the exemptions in the world. That's only my opinion. That's my biased opinion. The veterans should be the only ones with property exemptions. Moving on to number 4, property tax exemption. Moving on to number 4, rule changes for the Revenue Stabilization Fund. Again, if you read all this, you won't even know what that means. I don't fully comprehend it on the basis of I don't see it. I'm not sitting in the seat in the legislature, but just to give you just a little brief summary, there is, first of all, it's Act 198 and House Bill 244. And the House voted on it 102-0. There were 3 absent. And the Senate voted 38-0 with one absent. This goes into the stabilization fund. This isn't the general fund or anything. This is something that was set up in 2016 that collects from oil and gas taxes and corporation taxes. And when it reaches a certain level, they can use 10% of it to balance the budget or do other things with it. This just basically puts the brakes on that and makes it a little bit more difficult to access that money. They'd have to have a 2/3 vote and a few other things that would have to happen for it. So what you need to know about this is that it just holds the reins where the money is a little bit harder to be spent with our legislatures. It still can be used. It just makes it a little bit more difficult. So who wouldn't want that to be a little bit more difficult to where their own people would get in power and just want to spend it and spend us into oblivion? So I vote yes for that as well. So for those of you that are tracking along, amendment number 1 is a yes for me. Amendment number 2 is a yes for me. Amendment number 3 is a no. Amendment number 4 is a yes. To be fair, I think I glazed over this, but amendment number 3, the property tax exemption for the first responders, that's from Act 179 or Senate Bill 127. That was, and like I said, so this is my opinion because going by the same protocol of the other ones, by the amount of votes from the House and the Senate, the House voted 98-1 with 6 absent. The Senate voted 38-1 with 0 absent. So they voted overwhelmingly for it. In my opinion, I'm voting no for it. But that leaves us to one last proposition if you live here in Evalds Parish. That is for the $100 property tax increase on your properties for the fire departments across the parish. This is another one that I'll probably take a lot of heat on. Again, this is just my opinion. So it's my understanding of it, if you own one property or multiple properties, if you have a structure on it, there's no homestead exemption. So if you have a structure on it, either someone living in it or not living in it, you're going to pay $100 a year of property taxes. That is regardless of the $75,000 homestead exemption. So if your property's worth less than $75,000, it doesn't matter. You're not exempt. You're still going to pay the extra $100. I'm going to vote no for this for a couple of reasons. One, it's too high. Here in Evalds Parish, everyone knows you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. And every year there's tax increases that are proposed to the people, and they vote it down. It doesn't mean I wouldn't have voted for something. If I would have voted for something, maybe $25. But first of all, it would have to be explained to me. There would need to be maybe conferences, and maybe I missed them. This is just my opinion. Explaining the current funding. I'm not saying they don't need funding. Where's the money, all of the revenues come from, how they're managed, and what they need the new money for, the new taxes for. And I would be in support of it. The first thing that sparks my attention is that it's on a runoff election ballot when they know the voter turnout will be low. So the people that are pushing it can gather their family and friends to go out to the ballot and vote for it. The voter turnout will be low. That's just my opinion, why they pushed it. And anytime there's ever been something that's pushed in a runoff election, it's usually because they know there's a low voter turnout. I'm not accusing anything. That's my opinion. In my opinion, I think something could have passed if they would be more vocal about it, having it in the paper, having press conferences, having whatever, come on this podcast and explain and let the people know that, yes, we do need revenues and, for different projects or for the functionality of our fire departments. I think a lower tax dollar amount, if explained and honest to the people, I think something to the effect of $25 to start with that. I think that could have passed. $25 multiplied times the amount of property is a lot of money, to where this is going to most probably be voted zero unless the voter turnout is so bad. It's most probably be voted down. Now they're going to have zero, where if it would be a lower number, I believe it possibly could have passed. It could have been a win-win. It could have been a start for something else. So I'm not against the fire department by no means. I don't think it was rolled out the right way, and the dollar amount was too high. That's my opinion only. And I want to thank everyone for trekking along here, along with my lovely producer, Emily. And that was the one that I told you to remind me of. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is another edition of The Other Side. I wanna be